Let's talk Whoop 4.0. It's been 15 months since I ditched the Apple Watch for the Whoop strap, and everything's improved. I'm talking my strength, cardio, overall physical and mental well-being. The journal of the device, along with the HRV and recovery focus, has helped me be at my peak physical fitness, which I would have thought would have been when I was a 20-something college athlete back in the day. I'm gonna tell you, I'd mop the floor with that kid. If you've never seen my series of why I first took off the Apple Watch for the Whoop strap, or any of the series of videos I've done explaining how I use their metrics, please go check those out. This video is going to be focused on my research of the brand new Whoop 4.0 that is rolling out to everyone. The main discussion will be around the accuracy testing I've done over the past couple of weeks, but let's discuss what's new. So let's get the biggest con out of the way with Whoop that I hear all the time. The subscription model sucks and it's here to stay. I say this in just about every video I got, and it's the #1 con that people tell me. Now, the only positive of the subscription model is that when Whoop rolls a new device out, like they just did with the 4.0, and you had at least 6 months left on your subscription, then you got the device at no cost. Personally, I'd rather be a one payment and done, but it is what it is and we live with it. To me, it's worth it, and despite the assumptions people make, I do not have a free subscription. I get monthly billing just like everyone else. The second con I hear a lot of people talk about is the poor customer service. I've personally not had an issue with them, but I've had so many people tell me this that it's something I want to address. I've actually been fortunate enough to have 0 issues with any Whoop device that I've ever used, but I know that's not always the case. If you're someone to look to get the Whoop, just be aware of the potential issue. Now, the third con is the lack of Watchface on the device. Now, I have seen that they do have a patent on one that could slip over just like the battery pack does, but I have no idea if there are any plans to implement it. They did add a haptic feedback alarm on the device, which is pretty awesome. This is something I'd wanted when I first used the device, and it's been on wearables for years, like the Jawbone that I wore like 10 years ago. It's a much calmer and far less jarring way to wake up than a loud-ass alarm. This has been integrated into the sleep coach to give you options of waking up at an exact time or at your optimal sleep goal. This haptic feedback has also been a pleasant surprise for the strain goal targeting. I didn't even know that it was there as a feature, but when I work out and I hit my strain goal for the day, you feel the gentle vibration. So you can either stop your workout to optimize your recovery based on the goal for that day, or just keep going. The next improvement is the form factor of the device, which has shrunk to 2/3 of the size of the 3.0, while also containing more hardware like the haptic sensing that I just discussed, skin temperature sensing, and pulse ox. The size to me just wasn't that big of a deal, but I know people with tiny wrists are appreciating the reduced size. The body temperature has been interesting to me because I'm someone who runs very hot in bed. I have an 8 sleep mattress, which please check out that review if you're someone who also is a hot sleeper. I noticed that there's a notable difference between when I'm using my 8 sleep versus times when I'm not. This has correlated to improved recovery and decreased awake time while in bed for at least the small sample size of data that I have. As for the pulse ox, I've made comments about this with regard to the introduction of the readings on the Apple Watch. To me, it's not something that I paid too close attention to, but it's interesting based on your environment or potential illness. Environment in terms of elevation and illness like COVID. Just another data point that can be used to calculate potential illness or recovery. Before I finally get into the focus of accuracy, let's talk about the last improvement. Hallelujah, they fixed the battery pack. I've already hopped in the shower with it, no more destruction. They've done an incredible job with the redesign to encase the battery pack, which is now using USB-C to ensure that the water or sweat will not cause any issues. We'll see how the durability lasts down the road. Now, for the introduction of 4 times the amount of photodiodes. The internet is notorious for anecdotal conclusions, such as the Whoop strap is inaccurate. Now, I will say that there are credible reviewers, such as DC Rainmaker, whose program I'm going to be using to illustrate comparisons in this video, that have stated the same. One thing to make clear with optical sensing is that everyone is different. In my video on the Apple Watch covering what makes it the most accurate wrist-worn heart rate sensor, I discussed the technology that is known as photoplethysmography, or PPG. It's a sensitive tech and has its limitations. The only improvements that can be made is to provide more hardware feedback that can be inserted into proprietary algorithms and spit out the assumed heart rate. This is an indirect reading of our heartbeats, unlike an electrocardiogram like the Polar H10, which has been well regarded as the best and most accurate active heart rate sensor you can buy, even better than medical grade sensors. So the Whoop 4.0 is now comprised of green, red, and infrared LEDs to capture the blood being pumped in the skin under the device through different wavelengths, regardless of where it is on the body. Before, you were suggested to wear it on the wrist, or I used to have it on my bicep. And now they have their wearable clothing that has device inserts anywhere on your body. I've not tested using their new clothing, but theoretically it should not be an issue. So I used to wear it on my bicep for a couple reasons. First, comfort. It was so comfortable up on the arm that I would sometimes actually forget that it was there. And secondly, based on my understanding of PPG, I theorized that the more blood would be pumped into that arm area over the wrist and sooner reducing the latency of heartbeat readings. I never fully tested this theory, but it just made sense to me. Now with the increased hardware providing feedback to the device, it's not so much of a concern for me anymore. I also plan on getting my arm tattooed, and ink has a huge negative effect on PPG readings. Quite a while back, I did a heart rate accuracy comparison, and one of the devices I used was the Whoop 3.0. The data that came out was not unsurprising to me. The Whoop 3.0 is what I would call good enough. Good enough in terms of relying upon the data for its overall average accuracy and for any recovery metrics that it could provide. It came only second to the Apple Watch, which also I would classify as only good enough. None of the wrist-worn devices were accurate enough to be used for zone training, which requires you to keep your workload within certain heart rate zones. Not even the Garmin, which is well regarded as the go-to device for those in the triathlon area and utilize zone training heavily. So as for the Whoop 4.0, it provided what I would call a tiny incremental increase in overall accuracy to once again be good enough. I tested the device against the Polar H10 in 12 total workouts, none of which were the same. As expected, the steady state workouts yielded the most accurate readings as the reduction of sporadic movements allows the device to remain stable against the skin and the algorithms to calculate appropriately. But overall, I saw 98.31% increase to 98.55%. Now, a fractional percentage may not seem impressive, but I believe the idea that it can be worn anywhere on the body and yield the same results is what the new hardware on the 4.0 is all about. I feel more comfortable wearing the 4.0 on my wrist than I did the 3.0. Now we're looking at average readings, as the data within a given time frame should provide us appropriate strain score. The device still has shortcomings, as do all wrist-worn devices of real-time accurate readings. Sometimes it would hit the nail on the head, while for the most part there is a lag. One can assume that this is the time for the blood to pump from the heart, where the Polar H10 reads, to the wrist. In that time frame, we can see the differences in actual heart rate. So I do love the new device. Whoop should be implementing some new tech to look forward to with their acquisition of Push with firmware and software updates. It still remains my absolute favorite 24/7 tracker, and I don't see that changing in the near term. Although I'm always on the lookout for something else to test. So if you have any suggestions, hit me up. Not Oura Ring, you can't use it for barbell movements. I personally would love to see a slide on Watchface and timer that would just help add some more features on the device, because I just don't want to add another thing on my wrist to use. But that's probably my only suggestion of the 4.0. If there's any questions or any testing you'd like to see with the 4.0, please let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, smash that like button, hit the subscribe or follow, and I will see you in the next one.